Hello, friends, and welcome back to Compelling Stories for a Dinner Party. I'm your host, Christopher James, and tonight we take a look at a famous story from the chronicles of French history, the story of Martin Guerre, and the mystery of his stolen identity. Who was the man that stole Martin's wife and child and assumed his life? And how did it happen? It's a story from the 1550s in France, but it reads like an American soap opera from the 1970s, so let's lean into that. Pour yourself a Tom Collins and pass the fondue. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Sunday night movie presentation of Epic Betrayal, the Martin Guerre story, starring Martin Guerre, his wife, Bertrand de Rolls, his uncle, Pierre Guerre, and the Mystery Martin, with special appearances by judgmental villagers, supportive friends, and various sorts of children. Enjoy the show. In the rolling hills of 16th century France, nestled amidst the lush green pastures and vibrant farmlands, lay the quaint village of Artegot. It was a place where time seemed to stand still, a serene oasis untouched by the chaos of the outside world. The villagers lived simple lives, bound by the rhythm of the seasons and the steadfast traditions passed down through generations. Yet, beneath this idyllic surface, Artegot was about to become the epicenter of one of the most baffling mysteries in French history. One day, without warning, Martin Guerre, a young peasant, vanished from his village. His sudden disappearance left his wife, Bertrand de Rolls, and their young son in a state of turmoil and uncertainty. For years, there was no word from Martin. The villagers whispered about his fate. Had he met a tragic end, or had he simply abandoned his family? Just as hope began to fade, a man appeared in Artegot, claiming to be the long-lost Martin Guerre. This stranger seamlessly slipped into Martin's life, resuming his role as husband and father. But the truth was far more complex and sinister than anyone could have imagined. Martin Guerre's early life was unremarkable, marked by the routines and responsibilities of peasant life. Born into a family of farmers, Martin married Bertrand de Rolls, a match that united two respected families in the village. Their union was traditional, with Bertrand managing the household and Martin tending to the fields. They had a son, a sign of hope and continuity for the Guerre lineage. However, the seemingly perfect life of Martin and Bertrand took a dramatic turn when Martin abruptly disappeared. One morning, he was simply gone, leaving no trace behind. Bertrand was left to raise their young son alone, struggling to maintain the farm and navigate the social pressures of a woman abandoned by her husband. The villagers of Artegot, bound by their close-knit community, rallied around Bertrand, but whispers of scandal and speculation were never far from earshot. Years passed, and Martin's absence became a painful void in Bertrand's life. The villagers, too, felt the loss of one of their own, a man who had grown up among them, shared their burdens, and celebrated their joys. Martin's disappearance remained an unsolved mystery, a dark shadow over the village. Bertrand, resilient and steadfast, continued to hope for her husband's return, though deep down she feared the worst. Then, in a twist that no one saw coming, a man arrived in Artegot, claiming to be Martin Guerre. His return sparked a wave of relief and joy throughout the village. Bertrand, her heart filled with a mix of hope and trepidation, accepted him back into her life. The villagers welcomed him, eager to put the past behind them. But as the new Martin settled into his role, questions began to arise, and people became suspicious. Who was this man really, and what had happened to the real Martin Guerre? The man who claimed to be Martin Guerre was a striking figure, seemingly familiar yet subtly different. He walked into Artegot with an air of confidence, greeting old acquaintances with ease and recounting personal stories that only the real Martin could have known. His demeanor was warm, his manners impeccable, and his knowledge of the village's history and its people was impressive. He spoke to Bertrand with a familiarity that put her at ease, and his apparent affection for her and their son rekindled long lost feelings of happiness and stability. To explain his prolonged absence, the impostor spun a tale of adventure and hardship. He claimed that he, Martin, had left to seek a better life, driven by a sense of frustration with his situation here in Artegot. According to his story, he, Martin, had traveled far and wide. He spoke of distant lands, of back-breaking labor, and of a burning desire to return to his family when he had finally made something of himself. This narrative, filled with vivid details, resonated with the villagers who were eager to believe in the romantic notion of their neighbor's adventurous spirit. Life resumed as if Martin had never left. The impostor effortlessly took over the day-to-day operations of the farm, interacted with the villagers, and resumed his marital duties with Bertrand. The villagers, initially wary, were soon convinced by his actions and stories. Bertrand herself, though initially hesitant, found solace in the return of her husband. The family grew, with Bertrand bearing more children, and the once fractured household began to heal. However, even as the impostor wove himself into the fabric of Artegot, subtle cracks began to appear. Some villagers noted small discrepancies in his behavior and knowledge. He seemed to remember certain events differently or not at all. His mannerisms, while broadly similar, had slight differences that those closest to the real Martin found unsettling. These minor inconsistencies planted seeds of doubt in the minds of a few, but the impostor's charm and the collective desire for Martin's return kept these suspicions at bay. Among those harboring doubts was Pierre Guerre, Martin's uncle. Pierre had always been a keen observer, and his instincts told him something was amiss. He began to notice the subtle differences in the impostor's behavior and knowledge. Unlike the rest of the villagers, Pierre refused to dismiss these discrepancies as mere quirks. He started to question the impostor more directly, probing his memory and testing his responses. Each slip of the tongue, each moment of hesitation, fueled Pierre's conviction that this man was not his nephew. Pierre's suspicions were not without consequence. His relentless questioning created tension within the community. The village, once unified in its relief and joy at Martin's return, began to fracture. People took sides, some staunchly supporting the impostor and others aligning with Pierre's growing doubts. Bertrand found herself caught in the middle, torn between her loyalty to the man she had accepted as her husband and the unsettling possibility that Pierre might be right. As the rift in the community widened, Pierre escalated his efforts to expose the truth. He sought out legal counsel and presented his case to the local magistrate. The situation soon escalated beyond the village, drawing attention from the broader region. A trial was convened to determine the true identity of the man claiming to be Martin Guerre. The impostor, whose confident facade now showed signs of strain, was forced to defend his identity in a court of law. The trial was a spectacle, drawing crowds and becoming the talk of the region. Both sides presented their arguments with fervor. Those supporting the impostor recounted his intimate knowledge of Martin's life and his seamless integration into the community. Pierre and his supporters, however, highlighted the inconsistencies and discrepancies that they believed exposed the impostor's deception. Witnesses were called, evidence was scrutinized, and the village of Artegot watched anxiously as the fate of their Martin hung in the balance. Just as the trial reached a fever pitch, with emotions running high and the village divided, a stunning twist unfolded. A man arrived at the courthouse, proclaiming to be the real Martin Guerre. His entrance, caused an immediate uproar. Faces turned, whispers erupted, and disbelief spread throughout the crowd. Could this truly be Martin, or another layer of deception? The new arrival stood before the court and began to recount his harrowing journey. He told of how he had left Artegot years ago, driven by personal conflict and a yearning for adventure. His path had taken him across distant lands, through trials and tribulations, including a period of captivity that nearly broke his spirit. His tale was rich with vivid details, painting a picture of a man shaped by his experiences, yet unmistakably the Martin Guerre who had left so long ago. The judges and villagers listened in rapt attention as the real Martin detailed intimate moments from his past, memories only he could possess. He spoke of his childhood, his deep bond with Bertrand, and specific events that cemented his identity. Each revelation chipped away at the impostor's story, leaving him visibly shaken. With the real Martin Guerre's dramatic entry into the courtroom, the trial took a decisive and electrifying turn. The impostor, whose true identity was known to be Arnaud de Tulle, could no longer sustain his charade. Confronted with irrefutable evidence and the undeniable presence of the real Martin, Arnaud broke down. His confident facade crumbled as he confessed to the elaborate deceit. He had learned of Martin's life from various acquaintances and had seen an opportunity to assume his identity and claim the life Martin had left behind. The court's verdict was swift and unforgiving. Arnaud de Tulle was found guilty of imposture and sentenced to death. His execution, swift and public, served as a grim reminder of the consequences of deceit. The villagers of Artegot were left to grapple with the reality of having been deceived so thoroughly. For Bertrand, the return of her true husband was a moment of profound relief mixed with complex emotions. The years spent living with an impostor had left deep scars, but the resilience she had shown in the face of such adversity allowed her to begin healing. The real Martin Guerre, though he had returned, faced the challenge of rebuilding his life and relationships in a community forever changed by the ordeal. The tale of Martin Guerre and the impostor Arnaud de Tulle became a legend, a story passed down through generations as a cautionary tale about identity, deception, and the search for truth. It highlighted the ease with which trust could be manipulated and the lengths to which individuals would go to achieve their desires. Martin and Bertrand's journey of rebuilding their lives was fraught with difficulty, but their story is a testament to the human resilience and the enduring power of love and truth. The village of Artegot, having witnessed such a dramatic and perplexing series of events, remained forever marked by the legacy of Martin Guerre's disappearance and return. The legacy of this story endures, captivating the imagination and reminding us that the truth is often stranger than fiction. We'd love to know what you think. Do you think you would ever be duped by an imposter? Can you imagine how this could have ever happened in the first place? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and while you're there, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to check out the other compelling stories being told on our channel. Well, friends, we have come to the end of another fabulous dinner party. We hope you enjoyed this story tonight, and we hope to see you at the table again next time. Until then, my friends, may your gatherings always be eclectic and your stories compelling. Good night.